Hi, everybody. I'm Miles DeCastro. I am the owner of North Country Winds in Potsdam, New York, and I am also the musical instrument repair technician at the Crane School of Music.
Hi, my name is Christine Horning. I am the visiting clarinet instructor at the Crane School of Music, and Miles and I have been collaborating together on a series of videos about clarinet equipment, affordable upgrades, and other clarinerdy topics.
Yeah, and we've been doing cork grease for the past several weeks in an attempt to put together a week's worth of videos. And so hopefully you've been watching all our videos this week. If not, feel free to go back and watch them. And we're just going to kind of wrap up with a final Q&A all about corks and greases and cork greases.
So I think to start off, Miles, could you tell us a little bit about what cork is?
So cork is the bark of a certain kind of oak tree. A lot of times it just gets referred to as a cork tree. And once the bark is mature, it gets harvested, usually into, for musical instrument purposes, usually into sheets like this at different thicknesses. Or it can be used in all kinds of other cork products, probably most notably wine bottles. And the places cork trees can usually be found is in places that are also sort of known for making wine. So Italy, France, Spain, Portugal have a lot of cork trees, which is convenient because they all make a lot of wine and need lots of corks for their bottles of wine.
And we use the corks on wind instruments that separate, that come apart and disassemble. So oboes, bassoons, clarinets, the neck of the saxophone. But what is the difference between the sheet cork that is used on musical instruments versus the corks that we're all familiar with, like that we can find in an arts and crafts store or on wine bottles, things like that?
Sure. The corks that are going to go on musical instruments are usually a much, much higher quality. They'll be a lot clearer. So I don't know if you can see that. There are a bunch of little dots in that, but you can't really see through them. If I held it up to the light, you might be able to see a couple specks of light coming through. But the cork's going to be really clear, really solid, really consistent. And you want that because when you wrap it around a piece of the clarinet, you need that to make a seal when the instrument goes to it. Wine cork still needs to seal as well, of course, but it's a lot thicker than this. You know, it's going to be a big circle, bulbous shape. And so even if the cork isn't as clear, that thickness is going to really keep the wine in the bottle, keep it from penetrating. So so on wine corks, they can use lower quality corks, but you can't really do that on musical instruments. So the corks that go on musical instruments are really kind of the nicest cork that is available. And I know they grade it like AAA, quadruple A. I just know I like to get mine from a company called J.L. Smith. It's a big music supply company, just because I think they make some of the nicest looking cork and most consistent, clear, pore-free cork.
J.L. Smith sells cork sheets in a variety of sizes and thicknesses. For someone who is looking to recork their own tenons on a clarinet, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so there's two main thicknesses that pretty much every clarinet is going to take, and this includes even like E-flat clarinets and bass clarinets and contrabass clarinets. They're all going to be either 3/64 of an inch thickness or 1/16 of an inch thickness. Well, that's a very, very tiny amount, but remember, you do need to make a seal when you put the pieces together. So that is going to make a difference. So how do you know which one you need for your clarinet? If you have a plastic clarinet, you need 3/64. I have never seen a plastic clarinet that took anything other than 3/64 in 13 years of repairing clarinets. And that applies to oboes too. If you play any oboe, those also take 3/64 if it's going to be the plastic oboe. If your instrument's made out of wood, if you got a wood clarinet, it might be 3/64 and it might be 1/16. And different ones take different thicknesses. I tend to find really old and really new buffets Take 1/16, but buffets kind of in the middle that are like a little old but not that old. Take 3/64. If you're not sure and you're attempting to do this yourself, go big. Go for 1/16, because all that means is you'll just have to sand it a little bit extra at the end. If you do the size that's too thin, and you've got too loose of a fit when you put everything together, you need to start over again. There's no real way to make that thicker. So if you're not sure, go 1/16, but I would recommend buying a sheet of each one. And if you want to get started, there's another company that's also in North Carolina called Music Medic. They sell cork too, and theirs is not quite as nice as Dale Smith. It's still very, very good though, and it is significantly cheaper. So maybe start out with a couple pieces from them. And once you've got the hang of that, maybe invest in some of the real nice stuff from J.L. Smith.
Awesome. So this week we talked a lot about cork grease. What do you personally look for in cork grease that you use?
So I like synthetic cork grease because that's not going to break down the adhesive that's holding the cork on. When I replace a cork for somebody, I'm using the nicest cork. I've spent many years of my life perfecting doing this, making sure it looks really nice and is highly functional. I want that to be as nice as possible, and I want that to break down as slowly as possible. The glue isn't going to last forever, but some cork greases might have some things in it that's going to break down the adhesive, the contact cement that's holding the cork on, and I want that cork to last as long as possible. So I like a synthetic cork grease. And my favorite is actually the Ultimax from Music Medic for two reasons. One, that it's synthetic, and two, that I really like as a technician that they sell it in the syringe. It's very, very handy to keep on my bench and just dispense as needed. So just for me, looking at it from the perspective of a technician, those are two things that I love about Music Medic's Ultimax cork grease. But it would probably be very different as a player. So you as a clarinetist, what kind of stuff do you look for when you're considering different cork greases?
I guess the big thing for me is that I don't like when it makes a mess on my instrument when the grease is so thick that it winds up getting pushed up off of the cork and like collecting around the tenon or like the body of the clarinet. So I tend to like cork greases that are a little more oily and thinner. But as a teacher, I do teach university. I also have some younger students, and I know for them, it can make a mess if the cork grease is too thin because they're younger and they don't quite know how much they need, and children tend to be a little more heavy-handed. So for those students, I like the thicker cork grease because it's not going to make as much of a mess for them. But personally, I want something that's not going to leave a bunch of build up on the instrument.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, as a technician, I see stuff like that all the time, where it's just there's just this mound of cork grease like piled up, at the very bottom of the upper joint, just where the kids just smeared it all over the place there, and it might take 10 minutes to clean up, and you know what, that's going on the bill. So it's you can save money not only in your cork grease budget by not going through it quite as fast, but by maybe some quicker trips to the repair shop, and you just have to take off all that stuff. So yeah, I like that. That's a really good point. Maybe you would consider different cork greases for a pro versus a university student versus a beginner.
We're watching the ICA panels this week, and I know that on the repair panel they had mentioned avoiding petroleum on the ingredients. And while it's not always easy to find ingredient lists, as I discovered this week, for cork grease, what about petroleum? Because I know we've heard that as well in like chapsticks for musician, and Chop Saver is like a petroleum-free chapstick. Why would why would we want to avoid petroleum in the products that we're using on our instruments?
Yeah, I mean, that would make complete sense to try to avoid that because petroleum is a wonderful solvent. That's going to, once that works its way through the cork, and eventually it's going to get through those pores, no matter how nice of a cork is on your tenon, that's going to immediately start breaking down the adhesive that's holding that cork to the instrument. When I worked in like full line music stores, if a lot of times we'd have like a method book that had a little sticker on the back and we needed to get that off. A drop of like the cheapest valve oil you could find was great because there's a ton of petroleum in that stuff. Just one little drop there and it would break down the glue and you'd be able to slide the sticker right off. So petroleum is a wonderful solvent. If you need it to use it as a solvent, hey, great. When it's going on your cork, that's kind of a place you don't want a solvent. So yeah, I completely agree with them in saying avoid petroleum. And you can avoid that if by, like Music Medic's Ultimax or like D'Addario saying theirs is all natural. So even if you can't find the ingredients list, kind of read between the lines of their marketing to to see which ones maybe have petroleum and which ones don't.
Yeah. Speaking of the ingredients, D'Addario seemed to be the only company that I was able to like easily access their ingredient list. And I know you had said that they actually include the ingredients on their cork grease. So for anyone who's concerned about like what might be in their grease, or if it's for an allergy or just like consciousness reasons, D'Addario is all natural and organic as well. So for the corks, we want them to be lubricated so that the instrument comes together easily and without squeezing or damaging the keywork of the instrument or the body of the instrument. But can the grease also help create a more complete seal when the instrument is assembled?
I suppose it could. If you had a cork that was I don't know, it went on and off really easily by itself, and that isn't due to lubrication. Maybe it's just gotten compressed over the years. And that was on the verge of not sealing between joints. And you put cork grease on that, and you had a good seal with a good quality cork grease. I suppose that could make the difference. That could maybe complete the seal. But I do think if you ever got to that point, you're playing with fire. Especially depending on what joint it is. If the bell is the worst one, if you have a loose cork, the bell is the last one you want because there is nothing to grab that bell if it's going to fall off. So you're already playing with fire if it's gotten to that point. But I suppose if it did get to that point, the cork grease could be the saving grace to not cause a leak between your joints.
So if your cork is becoming compressed and you don't feel comfortable replacing the cork on your own, what is something that you can do to kind of fix that problem? Maybe like if it has to be fixed in a pinch.
In a real pinch, probably my favorite thing to do would be to wrap it in plumber's tape, sometimes called PTFE tape, sometimes called Teflon tape. But you can get it in any hardware store. Just wrap a couple layers around. It's very, very thin stuff. Just wrap that around the cork to give yourself some thickness to the cork. I've seen things about heating it. I've seen putting Vaseline on it and then melting the Vaseline out, and that slightly expands it. And you have to do that 5 or 6 times to get any kind of noticeable difference. But if you're already worried about not recorking it yourself, I don't think taking a flame too very close to the body of your instrument is the way to go. So absolutely keep that PTF tape handy. Definitely throw a little. It's pretty cheap. Throw a little roll in your case or in your emergency toolkit. Keep that on you just in case that ever comes up.
What about using dental floss as a way to build up the cork?
Yep.
I know I've seen people use floss or like even scraps of paper at
Yep.
times. Is there anything that you would recommend people absolutely do not use?
Oh, I'm sure there's something. Paper and dental floss aren't going to hurt it. I'm totally fine with that. You know, when you got to make it play, you got to make it play. As long as you're not going to damage the instrument going forward, that's fine. So, I just like I like the plumber's tape best, just because I think it's easier and quicker to use and quicker to take off too. Um, um, I'm sure there's something, but yeah, I mean, I would recommend, even though technically the heating will work slightly, I guess that would be my number one thing not to do. Because, there's just there's just so many risks for the very, very small reward of making that cork slightly more stable. So you went through all these cork greases, tried them all out in many, many different ways. Um, and with all the knowledge we've gained over this wonderful first annual Cork week, maybe annual. Do you have a winner? Do you have an all-time favorite out of the Cork greases you've gone? I know several people have suggested ones that we didn't try. We'll definitely add that at a later time. But out of all the ones we tried, because you tried quite a few of them,
12?
what's your favorite? Yeah.
I really liked the ones from the French brands, so the Buffet, Van Doren, LeBlanc, which I guess is not surprising because they're all clarinet manufacturers or companies that like specifically manufacture gear for clarinets, like Van Doren. They tend to be, they're more what I'm looking for in terms of like softness and like the slickness. Some of the cork greases felt really thick and sticky, which is what I normally find creates a lot of buildup on the tenon, that if you're too heavy-handed with it or you use too much grease, it'll get pushed up and make a mess. So I think definitely those three. But I'm really surprised by the Burt's Bees. I have a colleague of mine who swears by using Burt's Bees. And yeah, the consistency of it, it's more compact and like firmer than the French manufactured cork greases, but it still has like a very like thin viscosity to it. It goes on easy. It obviously doubles as chapstick, which is always a plus. So yeah, I would say one of those three or the Burt's Bees. The Van Doren is nice though because it's scented with apple blossom.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so that's awesome that you're a believer in the Burt's Bees. I think I have heard that maybe once a long time ago, but yeah, you have a colleague who's tried it out and tried and true is their go-to, and between Montreal and Potsdam, yeah, you're definitely going to want, with winter 8 months a year, you're going to want some good quality chapstick with you at all times. So hey, why not?
Yeah, and I think as long as it lubricates the cork, there's no petroleum, which with Burt's Bees there's not. Yeah, I think you wind up getting similar results, and I don't think that there is too much of a difference in the ingredients between the Burt's Bees and some of the all-natural cork greases.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense. And I can't imagine anything in the Burt's Bees that would ever hurt a clarinet or a cork or anything musical like that. So if that works, I say go for it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. If anybody has any questions for us, shoot us an email, drop them on the comments. We'll do our best to respond.
Oh, I have a side question.
Oh, yes.
The d'objet cork grease, the one that comes in the little macaroon case, it's pigmented. And it's meant to double as cork grease and chapstick. That's it. But it's very, very, very pigmented. And when I did the video on Will It Chapstick, it actually turned my lips bright pink. So I would imagine that it would tint the cork as well.
Probably, yeah.
Is that something that like a player should be concerned about, or is it just like
Yeah,
cork?
yeah, that's a good question. I would think that they wouldn't put, I mean, this is definitely, yeah, it's absolutely the most expensive cork grease I have. So I'm hoping they wouldn't put anything in there that's damaging to the cork, which I wouldn't imagine that there could, how damaging it could be if it's also made to go on your face. So, yeah, the pink is definitely interesting. I mean, hardly anybody would see it since it'll be covered when the instrument's together. Yeah, but still, that is a little bit weird with your pink corks. But I wouldn't be too concerned about it because it does seem like a good quality product. So BAM used to distribute it in the U.S. I did find another company that distributes it, which is good because I'm out, so I got to order some more. But yeah, I don't think it would. I think it'd be totally fine for the corks, and awesome gift idea for somebody who doesn't know what to get musician. And cork grease and chapstick are always getting mistaken for one another, so why fight it? Just both in one handy macaroon shaped container.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for answering all these questions that nobody ever asked.
No problem. Thank you for coming up with cork grease questions that nobody ever asked.
The most benign clarinet gear topic, I think. And somehow we got a week's worth of content out of it.
That's right. Yeah. Hopefully didn't bore people too badly.
No, the quarantine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming to Cork Week. And hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. And by all means, give us your feedback.
Yeah, and if there's a cork grease that we didn't test or that you really like, I know somebody had mentioned one earlier. I don't remember the brand off the top of my head, but
La Tromba.
Yes. If you have one that you love, or you use something that's maybe a little unorthodox, like the Burt's Bees, let us know. We're always down to check stuff out and experiment a little bit. So, thanks.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.